Good evening. This is the story of what happened to me in 1979, as told by me through my own words in a diary I found just a few days ago while going through some of my mother's belongings. Now, she had kept this diary because she had found it to be very interesting. In 1980, in the summer of 1980, we moved to a place in Turners Falls, Massachusetts, on 55 L Street. It was an old beehive on the corner of 55 and L Street, where there were six apartments, all of them condemnable at the best, with vacated and non usable apartments to the side. There was no walls on some of the places and no lights in the hallway. But we moved in. Things were good. I had my husband, me, my baby JR, and Stephen, who was 6 or 7 at the time. I had been there a couple of weeks when June 3rd, I noted in the diary, this is what I said. Today, I was at my kitchen sink, washing dishes and keeping an eye on the TV through the living room. JR was asleep and Steve was at school, when to my shock I saw a little boy. I will describe him as about 4'4", 70 to 80 pounds, with a shirt and pants on that remind me of Opie from Andy Taylor. I ran to the phone and called my husband at work and told him. He laughed it off, said it was just nerves. Well, maybe he's right. Days went on, and as I'm looking through my diary, I see a very strange thing that happened about a month later. Today, I was making breakfast and looking for a stick of butter. Now, I knew we had butter, but I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere, and I had to get some butter because I was making toast for my son Steve. I borrowed a stick of butter from Kelly and downstairs, who was my neighbor, and just made some breakfast. So after the kids went to school, I decided I was going to go get my coat out of the hall closet and head to the store and get some butter. And there in the hall closet was my butter. Now, why would a 26-year-old woman forget where she put her butter, and why would I put my butter in the closet? This was this is absolutely scared me. I'm so afraid. Call my husband, and again he laughs. Days go by. I'm looking at my diary, and there's no really interesting things until September 8th. September 8th, I'm at the kitchen sink once again, and I see what I would call a blur walk by me. He was unclear, but I was sure it was the same child that I had seen before. I tried to follow him, but to no avail. Time went by, and my next entry is November 3rd. November 3rd, I am downstairs at my friend Kelly and Dan's. Now they lived downstairs. My husband was asleep, and the two children were upstairs in bed. I just thought I'd go down and do a visit for a few minutes. When all of a sudden, it sounded like the party of the century was going off. I mean, that sounded like music was 100 decibels above normal. It sounded like people running around in my apartment. It was I'm so afraid. What is that noise? What is going on? I we didn't have a phone, and neither did they. So Danny grabbed a broom, I grabbed a mop stick, and Kelly grabbed a um, a little plastic bat, and we ran up the stairs. Oh my God! There's nobody here. There's nobody here. We looked everywhere. There's nobody here. And the sound is completely gone. Well, from the next few entries, nothing much is going on until December 30th. December 30th, we came back from a visit to my parents. My parents lived in St. Petersburg, Florida. Everybody knew we were there and decided to, and knew that the apartment was empty. So we went, had a nice visit, and when we came home, Kelly came out into the hall and said, "You're not going to believe this." While we were gone, 3 days before we got back, there was such noise coming out of the apartment where we lived that she ran and got the landlord. Now, my landlord was a tough man. His name was Pete Wise, and he was about 6'4" and about 300 pounds, and not anybody to screw around with. He went to the hallway, heard the noise, and went and grabbed a cop down the street. This cop was Rolly Reshutt. He'd been on the police force for at least 20 years and was well known as not too bad a guy. He was a tough cop. One went up the front stairs and one went up the back. Now, from what I recall, um, I believe Rolly went up the front stairs. They broke into my apartment and found no noise. The exact same thing that had happened to me just a few weeks before. This place was really scary. On to March 18th. It's been kind of cold. Winter's been hard, and I'm going to visit my mother in law. It's nearing the Easter, and I'm going to have a child very soon. We have flies, unbelievable flies. They're almost an inch long, and they have a white comb that sticks out of their backside. And I swear these flies give live birth. My husband killed every fly in the house. We went everywhere and made sure there were no flies. When we came back 3 hours later, the lampshade in our living room was covered with flies. There had to be 200 to 300 flies on that lampshade alone. No explanation, no nothing. Still no understanding from my husband. June 18th, I gave birth to a little girl, and things were quiet. My next entry is in August. I got up this morning early. The kids were really rambunctious. I've got two babies. My son is running around. My husband's getting ready for work. And I'm busy in the kitchen cooking. My husband is in the bathroom and he has the door open because he's trying to watch the kids while he's doing, getting ready for work. When all of a sudden I looked up and there was that little boy. I called out to my husband. He looked up, and at that point, he saw the exact same thing I did. We moved out that night. Now, come about, it says here, March 13th. My mother-in-law is moving into our old apartment. It has been done over end to end. It is beautiful shape. It now is a 3 bedroom with a full bath, and even all the walls have uh, plaster on it. She's to sign the contract this afternoon. Well, I get a call from my mother-in-law. Pete Wise has decided he is not going to rent this apartment to anyone. He is closing up the building, boarding it up, and no one is ever to go in there again. This was all done by the date that I list in my diary of October 9th. As long as I can remember, no one ever went in that building again. It stood on the side on the corner of 2nd and L Street until about 2005 when they tore it down for Habitat and Humanity. That is my story of the day.